Hello everybody, welcome to our webinar. And it's nice to have you. I see that a little bit of conversation is already going on in our chat. That's a lovely thing to see. This is exactly what I was hoping for when we started this video series, that we're going to have a little bit of conversation. And I can see that again, we're reaching all corners of the world, and I'm extremely proud to see this. So welcome everybody, my name is Michael and I'll be your teacher for today. I work for Vizacademy UK, and we are Vizacademy, so that's a rendering school that will teach you how to create photorealistic visualizations in less than 7 weeks. Hello from Brazil, and hello to you too, Andrew. Everybody that said hello right now in our chat, so hello to you too. Welcome everybody. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be creating something extraordinary, but with a little bit of a nudge towards all of the beginners. I too was starting and I didn't know where to really put my hands in, and 3ds Max is quite scary when you don't know anything about it. So I think we're going to go through the very basic today, and we're going to create as many objects as we can in a timely manner, but also I'm going to try to guide you through the whole process. Meanwhile, let me know if everything is fine with the sound, if everything is going smoothly, and also guys, let me know what is your experience level with 3ds Max, because I don't know if I should be really going through all the clicks or just most of them. So this is going to be very helpful for me, because it is also going to determine how much we're going to be able to do during today's webinar. Because obviously, if I'm going to be explaining each and every step, it is going to be slightly slower. Just for your convenience, I'm going to make sure that we also have a little bit of something on our screen where you're going to see that we can kind of see what I'm clicking, and I believe this is going to be helpful to you. At least you're going to now see what kind of shortcuts I'm using, and I think voicing them alone might not be enough. So let's just get into it, and let's get started. But before we can really start, let's examine what we're going to be creating, because that is what you all came in for. And the thing is that we're going to try to create this building, or let's say this small room. We're going to start with the walls. We're going to build the basic furniture, then we're going to download some of it, and we're going to adjust some of the downloaded models so that we can just create this room together, and we're going to see what exactly we will be doing. What happens if we when I use booleans? Sometimes materials and grabbles don't apply. That's probably because your model is not complete. It has unwelded elements, or probably it's just simply has some kind of other errors, because the mesh, if it's going to be let's say complete and it doesn't have any loops or errors that would suggest that elements are intersecting, then the Boolean should be working fine. I also recommend you to download the newest version of 3ds Max because it has Booleans as a modifier that really speeds up the process of modeling. But before we really get into it, remember to visit our website, that's Vizacademy Co. UK, and check out the available dates, because well, we're running out of spots and I would like to see you in my class. Okay, but I also have something special to announce, because Vizacademy is recognized by Autodesk now, which means that we are official. And what does it mean? Our students are going to be eligible to obtain a student's license, not only for 3ds Max, but also for all the other software that is related to Autodesk, as long as it's in a student program. So Any student that's going to sign up now is going to have a chance to get a 1-year license, education version, for free, and I think it's going to be something amazing. So because this is a beginner's tutorial, I'm guessing that some of you will also have a problem of actually obtaining the software. So first thing first, make sure to go to autodesk.com, click on products, and download the free trial for 3ds Max. The installation process is straightforward. There are no curveballs and nothing is going to surprise you. You just double click on the installer, wait for it to finish, click next a couple of times, and that's going to be it. Okay, so that's going to be the installation of 3ds Max. I know we should be walking through the process, but I don't want to mess up my UI. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the other piece of software that we're going to be using that's going to be obtainable from coronarenderer.com, and that software is Corona Rendering Engine. We're going to be using this engine to make sure that, we can actually produce those pretty pictures that we want. And also, when you want to download it, make sure to click on download, go to this section, download this software. The installation process is also straightforward. Double click, wait for it to finish. That's it. Now, when do you start to add the AutoCAD floor plans? First, do you create a room just by dimension nodes? That's a good question. This time we're going to be using just dimension nodes, and I'm going to disclose those, but we will be making some CAD videos in the future, probably next week, which is going to be an exterior. Hello sir, is it possible to send a facade picture that I struggled to modeling? It's Turkish masonry building. I mean, I don't do commissions, and at the moment I would not be able to help you with that due to the amount of work that I have. But if you're going to be one of our students, that is going to be different, because if you are my student, I'm going to be able to find a little bit of time for you, because, well, that's going to be for educational purposes, obviously. So when I create a rectangle and render it, but I can't create a duplicate of the one of these splines. How do I solve it? You probably need to press Shift Control to duplicate it. That's going to allow you to do it. Do we really need the professional one? No, you don't need the professional version of Corona in this case, because we're going to be using the trial. So that's going to be probably a little bit easier. So the furniture that we're going to be able to produce today is pretty much all of those blocky elements, but we're also going to be able to fill our scene with all of this chunk. And that's going to be part of the downloading, mixing, and remaking elements in 3ds Max. So let's get started. First thing you need is probably clean 3ds Max. So for that, we're going to make sure to quickly yet again examine our model. In this case, I'm going to ensure that what we're going to be doing, or let's say the models or dimensions that we're going to be using are going to be quite simple to understand. First, it's the height. So the height of this element is going to be 270 centimeters. So yes, we're going to be working with centimeters. Also, we're going to have the width of 370, so we're going to use a very simple measurements, and the length is going to be probably, you guessed it, the same. So it's going to be 370. Quite simple numbers so we can understand, but as this is going to be absolutely for beginners, we're going to have to do a little bit of a setup before we get into it. So with fresh 3ds Max that's still restarting on my computer loves when I try to reset 3ds Max. It just takes an hour to do so. Since like 3 days, it's really been a huge brat. So let's go ahead and start. So because some of you might be installing 3ds Max for the first time. 3ds Max, once you start it for the first time, is going to ask you whether you want to work with design or classic version. version. If you chose design, that's fine, but we do choose the classic because the classic is going to be the most used version in the industry. So it's not going to give you any kind of errors or problems, but it's going to handle textures and mapping a little bit differently. To set your 3ds Max to the same settings that I have, we're going to go to customize, and the first thing we're going to do is go to custom default switcher. Here we're going to make sure that we've got our max selected, and then you're going to select the light version or the darker version. I prefer to use darker version because it helps me, well, save my eyes a little bit. Now, once you click on this, click on set. Once you click on the set, you're going to need to restart your 3ds Max because all of the UIs are being reset, and you're going to experience some of the menus missing or just being black for no reason. So make sure to restart your 3ds Max right now once you did this. Then we're going to go to a new fresh 3ds Max that reopens, and we're going to continue setting up our hardware. So we're going to software. We're going to go ahead and go to customize at the upper menu, and we're going to click on unit setup. Make sure that you're using the same units that I am. So it's going to be metric, system units set to centimeters, click OK and OK. This is going to be just our sweet start, and we're going to be working on the same page. Remember that the design part is going to be also functional, and there's not going to be any problems. But if you don't set up your units, you're going to be working with units, and that is still going to make some sense, and proportions are going to also make sense, but you're not going to have any kind of you're not going to be working with any kind of measurements that are understandable by humans, but still the proportions are going to be fine. So some of your elements are going to require a bit of rescaling. That is why we set up this customization. Okay, so hello, nice to see you guys. Hello, Rafael. Can I use Chaos Corona 10 or on Intel HD graphics? The funny part is that you can use Corona on any graphics card because, to be honest, it's going to be dependent on your processor. So it's better to focus on that. What do you think about animation with Corona? Animation with Corona, as with any other software, as long as you've got enough time, a strong enough computer, it is going to look and feel good. But you're probably referring to the fact that some rendering engines are a little bit faster. They also will produce a little bit lower quality results. So if we set Corona to have the same low quality, well, it's going to be just as fast. So it's just going to be, you win some, you lose some. What do you think about, okay, hello Mike, I love your work. Can you make a video about how to create any textures in Corona Render? I think we can. Okay. Sir, Vizacademy is the best place to be pro with, the best. Allah, thank you very much. Allah is actually one of my students, so I'm really glad to hear this. That wasn't expected, and we're not paying him. Thank you, Allah. That's so nice. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be doing, I forgot for a second that this is a total beginner version of tutorial. So since we've got a fresh 3ds Max, we're going to go to the right-hand panel, and this is called the command panel. So what we are going to be doing is we're going to make sure that this command panel, obviously it's going to be docked by default on the left. I shouldn't have pulled it off, but if you do by mistake, make sure to right-click and dock it on the right. So this is our command panel. Here we have most of the important elements that we're going to be using. Here we've got the creation panel, which is going to allow us to create new objects and add them to our scene. Here we've got the modify panel, where we will be adding new properties and changing some of the properties of our objects, or just simply messing up with them. Then we've got the hierarchy tab, which is going to be, let's say, the soul of the model or gravity center, where we will be setting pivots, and we're going to be working with some of its properties that are only related to movement. Here we've got the motion and utilities. This one, we don't use it because it's really not going to be that fun to do right now, especially once we're beginners. Right now, if you can see here, we've got a couple of icons. This is geometry creation. This is going to be creation for splines and such objects. We've got lights, then we've got cameras, helpers, systems and forces, and more systems. So pretty simple stuff, nothing that's going to be some kind of loop that's and no curveballs. So we're just going to go ahead and create a box. So to create a box, we need to click on the box text. Then we're going to left click on our screen, and if you're going to hold your left button, you're going to start creating the object. If we now go to the left button, we're going to create a negative sized object. If we go to the right side or up, we're going to create an object that's going to have a positive value in its height. In this case, it's not going to have a really big impact on our object because we're going to type in those values in a second. So to create a box, you simply need to drag, click, and click again to apply it. But now I deleted that older one, and let's make sure to select the object that we have at our hand. Because the creation of the box box creation is still open, we're going to make sure to right click somewhere on our screen. That's going to automatically switch to our select object option. You can also just click on that if you want to, but I believe that right clicking is going to be a little bit easier and faster for you. Hi sir, do you decrease the DS Max interface? How do I decrease? I didn't decrease anything. You probably want to make it smaller, so you need a little bit higher resolution, or you need to change the properties in the scaling of the software. How could I reduce the size of max or reduce the number of vertices? That's going to be a little bit more on an advanced size or side of our models, but there's a neat trick that you may want to try, Ali, because you might not know it, but in Customize, and when you go to Preferences, you're going to be met with the files. And here the files are going to allow you to also compress on save. Compress on save means that your files are going to be zipped, compressed, whatever that you call it, you name it, whatever. But the file size is going to be way smaller. Also, it's going to take a little bit longer to save, but at the same time, you're going to save a lot of space. What program? It's 3ds Max. So if you want to download it, you can go to Autodesk website. What's the logical? I don't know what do you mean. When we render in 2K resolution, if we zoom in the pixel, will break. Why is that? I don't think I know what you mean, honestly, Abdul. So you would have to be a little bit more precise with your question. So now let's make sure to continue, because we are now going to take 2 or 3 minutes to build, and then I'm going to read your questions and try to answer as much as I can. Quickly, we're going to select our object with selection panel. We're going to make sure to go to our modify, and here we're going to type in 370. Okay, then we're going to go for 370, and we're also going to type in height -20. Okay, so the -20 is just for me and my convenience, because I like to work with my floor below 0, because that way it's going to be easier for me to work with any other elements. Did you upload the files about last tutorial? Yazan, no, I didn't, and I remember about Barbie, because right now I'm a little bit occupied with different recordings, and yes, I remember it. And I will be doing that quite soon. So thank you for reminding me. I still have you on my to-do list. It's right here. So definitely gonna do it at some point. I remember. Hello, where can I look up your PC specs? Do you render and do you... Okay, so I'm going to probably have to make sure to set those or put those specs on our computer. Okay, now we're going to make sure to go to the first element of our UI. Remember that this is a total beginner tutorial, so we're going to also talk about this part of the menu. It's going to be very important to have those elements because, well, you will be using them a lot. First, we've got the movement tool. Movement tool can be called upon by pressing W on your keyboard. This is going to open this, let's say it's going to change the object's pivot into a gizmo. This gizmo is going to allow you to move your object. We've got three options of movement, either on Y-axis, Z-axis, and X-axis. So all three of those axes are going to be related to different sizes and different values. But to be honest, they won't really have any magical properties. It's just movement. But there's a little bit of an extra to it because we can also click on between two axes and move our object on both axes at the same time. Then we can move on to the other one or just move on the X and Y axis. This way we're going to be moving our object exactly flat and it's not going to go up. But if we want to move this object with in three dimensions at the same time, which makes no sense really, we can just grab this middle part and that's going to allow us to move it on all three axes. But this is beside the point at the moment. Now, what's going to be important is that we also have rotation. Rotation is going to be similar to movement. It's going to have all three options for rotation in different axes, and that's going to allow us to manipulate our object to our needs. We also have scaling, which is going to have exactly the same course of action, where you can grab all the handles and move them one by one. And then we've got select and place that we're going to be talking about later on. Okay, so for now, I'm going to be using movement tool. So click W or this icon, and let's type in the dimensions or the coordinates where I want to put this object. Because I don't want to go too far from the 0 and I want to work with smaller values, I'm going to type in 0x and also 0 on my Y-axis. So this is going to allow me to put the object exactly in the middle of my scene. Just for your convenience, so you can see a little bit better, I'm going to switch the default shading to clay mode. It's going to allow you to see the model a little bit better. The lines are going to be more emphasized, and that's going to also allow us to move to another step, which is going to be right-clicking on our object and going all the way down to convert to. Then we're going to select editable poly, and in this case, our object properties are going to change because this is no longer just a box, a primitive, or let's say a default object in 3ds Max. This is now going to be box that's, let's say, in editable poly mode, which opens up a plethora of options for us, which is again going to be something that you have to explore a little bit. Editable poly is the most commonly used way of manipulating these objects and their parts. So we should first learn to recognize three main sub-object levels. So this is going to be vertex. Vertex is really going to be a one-dimensional point. It only has coordinates and no size. No matter how much we zoom in, it's always going to have the same size on your screen. It's one-dimensional. So it just is. But it also carries information about the coordinates where it resides. So two connected vertices will create something that's commonly called edge. So if we select a line in between two vertices, we're going to see that. To better visualize all of the elements that we have in our 3ds Max, I'm going to press F4. That's going to call upon edged faces, which is going to make all of the extra lines appear on our screen. Now you can see that we can have a little bit of a better view on all of the lines between the edges. Though this edge and that edge can also be connected. It actually is connected by 3ds Max to some extent, but 3ds Max chose not to display this because it's going to be a little bit easier for us this way. So now we're going to make sure to move on to the third most important sub-object level, which is called polygon. Polygon is, let's say, a cluster of edges that are connected in a closed loop. when that closed loop is created by minimum of 3 edges, we can see that we're going to have a polygon, which is a surface, which also coincidentally is the most primitive 3D object we can create of all. Because our point was one-dimensional, edge is two-dimensional, and well, our polygon is the first 3-dimensional object. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and manipulate those vertices a little bit. First, we're going to go to Edge, and we're going to try to select few of the edges that we have here. I'm going to select all of them along the way. Please notice that right now, by moving my mouse like that to select all the elements, I held the left mouse button to create the selection, and we're just going to be able to quickly select everything. I'm pressing F3 right now to highlight all the edges that I've selected. This is going to be surely the easiest way of selecting the edges, and we now want to connect them in order to create or add new elements to our box. That's going to allow us, and this option in Editable Poly menu is going to allow us to connect them. So we just click on Connect Once, and we just created this nice line. So let's move it somewhere closer to this point. We want it to be more or less at this distance. We could be a little bit more precise, and if you want to, we can also start using Snap. So before we start using Snap and start being precise with 3ds Max, which I generally do not recommend, we can right-click on this tree icon. We're going to set up this vertex and midpoint. If your settings in this area are different, make sure to set them to exactly what I have right now. Remember to also visit the options. Options will allow you to click on Enable Access Constraints. This is very important because otherwise the snap is going to act a little bit crazy. Hello from Uzbekistan. Can a polygon be converted back to what? Wait a second. The chat is a little bit weird today. I need to pop it up. So can a polygon be converted back to, say, a plane? Well, a polygon is a plane, so yes, it can. To some extent, it all depends on its shape, and yes, it can. But it's not one-click solution. Thanks, Mike, for answering me. My max file is simple resolution from room, but the file size is like 1.5 gigabytes. So my workflow became too slow. Ali, you need to start using optimization. Pro optimization, proxies, and all other options are available to you, but this is going to be probably just some of the objects are too dense and too big. So, Salam. Okay, now let's continue by snapping our objects to another one. So first, let's click on Snap, move this vertex here, and we're going to force it to move 20 centimeters to the left. So we're going to make sure to right click on our movement tool. And here we can see that we've got the offset settings. So we can type in any value we want to be precise. So I'm going to type in 20. Okay, so 20 works. We need to do exactly the same thing for the opposite side. So we're going to connect, snap it to the wall, and this time we're going to type in on the y-axis. Please notice that at this point, due to the fact that I moved this object to the right of my current screen, you can see that this value is, or let's say this axis, the y-axis, is facing towards that way. Actually, that way. So in this case, you can see that it's going to mean that since this arrow is pointing the opposite direction, in order to move an object, something this way, we're going to need to type in negative values. So we're going to try that. Negative values work the charm. So we're going to go for minus 20 and just type it in. Now we've got our main elements for our walls. Let's go ahead and select some of the polygons to extrude them upwards. Let's select this polygon, that polygon, and that polygon. How do we really get to polygon selection? We just click 4 on our keyboard or just click on this icon. So now we're going to make sure to move our element a little bit further. In newer versions of 3ds Max, we have something called a Swift Extrude or Smart Extrude, which can be quickly used, but it's not really that precise. If you want to be precise, we can go ahead and use the good old Extrude that's part of 3ds Max since forever. We're going to click on Settings, and here we can type in whatever value we want. So I'm going to type in 270 because that's what we determined that our building's height is going to be at the very beginning. Now we're going to just type in, we're going to apply this and click OK. We now need to create our window, and that's going to be a bit of a question. Do we create a loop again through this whole object, or do we just cut through it like we would like to? Well, there are two options. We can either create this shape by going for inset and setting up this element, but that's going to create one type of a mesh. This mesh is not going to be further adjusted, so we don't need to do it. But at the same time, I kind of want to add those lines because I believe it's going to be easier. And looking at our reference that we have right here, we need to make sure that we're going to be able to also apply this element here, as well as the opening for the window. So how about we just do it? First, I'm going to press Alt and 1. Nope, Alt and 1 in 3ds Max, come on. Okay, Alt and 1 in 3ds Max is going to allow us to open or create a new, it's going to open a new option. It's just like Connect, but it works with a certain type of loops in 3ds Max. So as long as the loop, the connection between two or more edges is going to be on a ring, which is also going to require quad mesh, which we're going to touch upon later on, it is going to allow you to do a full circle, full connection, while Connect is going to be a little bit more brute force, as it's going to allow you to create the same connections but without really going through it. Okay, so I did the Swift loops right now. Okay, we need to make sure to set our window's height, and all the elements need to be in the right position. Just like a second ago, first we're going to make sure to select this edge, double click on it. This is going to select the whole loop. Make sure to go to our wall, align it to that wall, and make sure to, thank you very much for following me from Kenya. That's so sweet of you. Let's go for 160 and type in that value. Now we're going to double click on the other side of our window, and we're going to do the same. Remember that I am aware that we can do it faster and easier. It is just that I want you guys to go through the very basic and the first, or let's say the most easiest way of creating something that cannot go wrong. So this is why we're doing it this way. Now we're going to double click on this horizontal line, and we're going to type in the exact value at which we want our window to be placed. 85 centimeters. I need to stop using a numpad because it makes it look really bad. So we're going to type it 85 so everybody can see it. And here we're going to also make sure that our window height is going to make sense. So for that, how about we type in something around 160? I'm not sure how big I want this window to be. Let's go 155. Okay. More or less, that's fine. Okay, yes, baby steps, please. Okay, now let's go back to our Polygon Selection. This is going to be fun because earlier in 3ds Max, especially if you have some acquaintance with it, you had to select one polygon, then go around the object and select the other one, and then delete or bridge those two. So this would allow you to create this opening in your model. But now 3ds Max got a little bit smarter. Now we can simply select one of the polygons and shift extrude through it. So just hold your left shift and move through your object like I did right now, and we're going to have exactly the same effect. So quite simple and quite fun. That also opens us to another possibility. As long as we don't care about the topology, and in this case, we don't have to, we can also do the same to create new geometry in 3ds Max. So for that, you can shift and drag this out, and it's going to be 100% okay mesh. But in this case, because it's we're moving in baby steps, we're going to make sure that we create it in the same manner as we did with the other elements. So press Alt and 1, create this loop, and make sure that this whole line is going to be approximately 15 or 20 centimeters away from that line. Now we're going to press S on our keyboard to turn on our snap. We're going to move it exactly where the other wall is, and we're just going to make sure to type in 20 in our... I need to stop using numpad because it looks bad on our keyboard. Now, this is going to be a bit of a problem because we're now in a bit of a pickle, right? I want this mesh to still look good, and if I just try to delete everything or extrude it at once, it's going to look the opposite of what we want. So we're going to move this step by step. By holding left shift, we're going to shift drag it here, then we're going to shift drag it there, and we're going to move it exactly to the top. This, in return, is going to cut some of the geometry, so there's no space in between those two polygons. And you can see that now those are connected, which is very cool because we now have the basis for our room. We just basically created most of it, or at least most of the walls. Depending on what version of 3ds Max you're using, you're either going to be able to do the next step quickly or with a little bit of a hiccup. So I think we're going to do this with a little bit easier approach. So first we're going to go ahead and, still being in the polygon selection, I'm going to go by angle, select this whole surface, and now we're going to make sure to type in -1. This is just for your convenience. All of the objects that we create in 3ds Max, this is just now for the, let's say, introduction purposes. All the objects that we create in 3ds Max by default will start their life on 0 within the within the z-axis, which means that again we're going to have a little bit of a bad time if our floor is going to be just 1 or 2 centimeters above this element. So we're going to make sure to put our floor 1 centimeter below, because we're going to create a special or separate object for our floor. Greetings from Kosovo, nice. Sweden, and guys, this is amazing. Meanwhile, if you have any questions to about what I'm doing, please make sure to ask them, because I am sure you might have a few of them. So go ahead and ask those questions if you have any questions. So did I miss anything earlier? Okay, got it. Let's continue. Now, with our selection still in place, we're going to make sure to detach this part. So we're going to go all the way to Edit Geometry, Detach, and we're going to detach as clone. This is going to result in creation of a new object, which at the moment isn't really visible to us because it's exactly in the position where the previous polygon was. This also opens up a very important distinction. We can have multiple elements in one object, but each time when we select a different object, its name is going to change. So it's important to pay attention to that, because names and object properties will differ depending on what your settings. Now, because we've set up this object to be on -1, I'm going to do a bit of a trick on it. Let's move to a different viewport. By clicking this icon here, I can enlarge and make smaller all of my viewports. So this object is 1 centimeter below 0. So I'm going to add a shell modifier on top of it to add a little bit of thickness to it. Remember that we're doing this ISO shot, orthographic shot, where all the thickness the thickness of the objects is going to play a certain role, just so it's going to make it look a little bit better. So in this case, we're going to add that extra centimeter, so we can now see that our floor is literally back at 0. In 3ds Max, this black line determines where the x, y, and z axis 0 is. It's going to be shown in all of the axes, and it's going to also be part of the grid. Wish this was my job. If you're going to, I don't want to oversell us, but I actually know somebody from Norway that got a job in Norway, and how to say this, the intermediate level, or let's say slightly above the junior pay grade, and it blew my mind how much that guy was making, and he was straight out of our training. So you may want to try it. So if you want to learn how to do what I'm doing, make sure to visit our training, and that is going to be also the best thing that you can do is check out the available dates on our training. One thing that I mentioned earlier is that Vizacademy is now recognized by Autodesk. So by signing up to our training, you will be able to obtain your own license for 3ds Max absolutely for free, which you're going to be able to use for your educational purposes. This is something amazing, because I found out that having 3ds Max for free is super cool. So if you want to join us, make sure to do it now. Also, our students are eligible for Corona student version, which is dirt cheap. It's only the 10% of regular pricing. Again, it's the best deal you can get. So if you want to learn 3ds Max and Corona Renderer, there's no better place. Let's go ahead and continue with this floor object. So it's in the place, and we're going to pretty much now move on to our window. Let's enlarge our viewport. So let's select one of them, Alt and W to make it bigger, and make sure to zoom in a little bit closer to the window. We're going to go back to our creation panel, go for a box, and here we're going to quickly select our snap yet again, and we're going to snap from one corner to another to create a box. This box is going to be converted to editable poly by right-clicking, going to convert to and editable poly. Here we can now grab one of the polygons and slightly extrude it. Remember to turn off your snap toggle and move your object slightly forward. This is just an, let's say, introduction to 3ds Max, so we don't have to be very precise about anything we do. At this point, depending on how much you want to have your mesh absolutely perfectly clean, we're going to either select the back and add the inset, or you don't need to select the elements at the back and just do the inset. So we're going to go for this selection because we want this to be a little bit more elegant. Shift, drag it, and we just make sure to add the frame that we can see on our reference. So it's just this frame. But now we need to start adding the furniture, because that's going to be the piece of geometry that we're actually going to be capable of building with our beginner skills. Love from India, can you show how to render today? I think we're going to have enough time for that, but it's all going to determine it. I don't want to make those lessons 2 or 3 hours long, so we're going to see how much we can do together today. Following and learning a lot from Algeria. Elka, thank you very much. Will do. So love from India. I'm from Syria, and I loved Vizacademy so much. Thank you guys. I am extremely glad to hear this from you, especially that we are reaching all over the world. It's really amazing. I never imagined that I'm going to have such nice audience. Really, internet is ruthless. Yeah, you know what I mean. But seeing you here is going to be amazing. So, Arch, nice to see you again. The cost differs depending on what option you would like to choose for yourself, but I recommend you to visit our website. That's going to be the best option for you, because we've got plenty of trainings. The main one is currently available in the available dates, so that's going to be the easiest way to go there. Now, with all of that, all of the walls created, we kind of lack the opposite wall and, well, the other one, which is probably going to be the doors. But I hope that you're going to be able to forgive us, or that our future clients will forgive us, that we're not going to be adding them for artistic purposes, because we want this to be IKEA box, okay? So now let's move on to the furniture. Well, when it comes to building furniture in 3ds Max, there are a few rules that you have to abide by. First and most important, you have to know what you want to do prior to doing it. You don't need to know the exact measurements, because you can always scale and refine the elements, but the proportions are very important. So first object that we're going to create is going to be this furniture piece. It's not any kind of watching from Tunisia, Iraq, Pakistan. So nice, guys. I can also see somebody's from USA. Nice to have you here. So now let's see. Here we've got this simple object, which is again going to be something that we will be building. We already have all the tools and knowledge how to do it, but now we kind of need to put it into action and test what we've learned. I recommended so many this academy for my friends. Thank you, Ali. That's so nice of you. And now let's see how we can handle this object. So first of all, again, we need some kind of measurements. So the height of this object is going to be 60 centimeters, so 60. The length is going to be set, wait a second, no, I don't have that option. It's going to be 110. Oh, that one really didn't work out. And also the depth is going to be 45 centimeters. I can hear that my co-host is being a little bit agitated. Render. Okay. So we're going to try to do those measurements, and we're going to make sure to use the most basics setup. So this is going to be 2 centimeters. And we're going to stick to that. Also, here we have 40 centimeters because I measured it prior to showing any of this. So let's go ahead to our main shot, and let's just create our first box. So this box is going to be exactly the same as any box that we created so far. So let's type in all the values that we're interested in. So let's go to Modify Panel. The length is going to be set to 60. No, it's supposed to be 45 in this case. The width is going to be 110, and the height is going to be 60. So that's going to be pretty much the size of our furniture piece. And now with Snap Off, I'm going to move this slightly to the wall, and because moving around in this view is going to be slightly uneasy for me, I'm going to make sure to click on this icon here. It's called Isolate Selection. So we're going to isolate our selection, and we're going to convert our object to editable poly. Convert to editable poly, and voila, we're now working on it. So remembering how the furniture piece looks like, we need one line here, we need one line there, and we kind of want all of those elements to be separate. Just like in real life furniture, we want those to be separate elements just so we can add one extra detail at the end to make it look more realistic or pro than what I have right here. So let's go. Now, with Clean 3ds Max, I'm going to convert this object to editable poly. It already is. So we're going to press 4 on our. We're going to press F3 on our keyboard. Now 1, and we're just going to start moving our vertices. This vertex is going to be exactly 2 centimeters below our top. So I'm going to type in 58. So 58. Now we're going to go to Element, and this is what I mentioned earlier. We can have multiple elements in one object, which is really a container. So our elements do not need to be connected. Press Ctrl and Shift at the same time and move your mouse somewhere around your screen to copy your element, and make sure that it's actually an element. So it's going to be 2 separate objects in one mesh. Now we're going to move the top of our newly created polygon and move it somewhere closer to the bottom of the first one. We don't want to be super precise about it because, again, it's not going to be that important. And if you look into any furniture at your house, you're probably going to be able to notice that, well, it also has some sort of imperfection. Now, to avoid moving our camera from position that we're currently in, by clicking in one spot, we're going to select the polygon that's facing towards us. If we click at the same spot without moving our mouse, we're going to select the opposite object, which is going to be the bottom of our selection. If we quickly double click, we're going to select the whole element. So let's go ahead and now go for select and then select the bottom. I need to make sure that this element is going to be 2 centimeters above the ground. So this is going to be our main part. Okay, with again all of that out of the way, let's select an element yet again, and we're going to Shift Control, drag this element to create the bottom for our furniture. Move it up so it's going to be as close. Sometimes the bright red color is going to absolutely make it impossible to work with any sort of precision. So we can press F2 on our keyboard to turn off our polygon selection, or let's say the way polygons are displayed. They will look kinda exactly like edges, so it's easy to confuse this, but at the same time it's easy to look through this to make those changes. Okay, I'm from Bulgaria. Which version of 3ds Max and V-Ray could you recommend for a medium properties laptop? I would say the newest one, because newest is always the best. By angle option in edit poly mode, polygon selection, how does that work? And you need to explain this. Okay, so thank you for asking that question. So if we're going to have a polygon, and best to describe this or highlight this is to use some kind of more elaborate polygon, or let's say object. So if we're going to have any kind of object like a sphere, and I'm going to go ahead and select by angle, we're going to go for by 45. So we're going to be able to select all of the polygons. So what it means is that it selects all the polygons that the difference between them is going to be less than 45 degrees. So if I'm going to increase this value, it's going to be harder to select any polygons up until it's going to be nearly impossible. So a biangle on a sphere is actually going to be a very bad idea. So we're going to have to lower the value up until we reach the first point. But to be honest, all the angles are the same. So it's going to, it's going to look bad, because once we select one extra polygon, all of them are going to follow. So it's going to be approximately 25-ish. Okay, so yeah, this is going to be a very bad way of showing it. But what it does, it allows you to select objects that curvature is no greater by the certain angle. So it means that you're going to be selecting edges by certain groups or with certain properties. Sorry, this was, I don't have an object on me right now to quickly show it to you. Okay, so now we're going biangle option. Hello from Iran. I'm a big fan of your webinars. I have watched almost all of your videos. You are amazing. Stina, that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Now, let's make sure to add this detail that we've seen here. So we want that here, and we want it to go all the way down. So we could do a bit of cutting and insetting and whatnot, but we're going to be smart about it. So first we're going to go to element, select polygon, then we're going to deselect this element, press F3 to see what we're doing, select the top part, deselect the top part, and also the left wall. We're going to go to inset and click on settings, and we're going to type in 2 centimeters. How do you add new lines on object like you did in the last live? It's Swift Loop. It's called Swift Loop option, or just Swift Loop. You can find it in the ribbon or by using Alt and 1 on your keyboard. Okay, so now we've got our inset and we're just going to click OK on it. We need to select this one polygon and move it towards the whole plane. You can see that, well, it kind of messed it up. That's due to the fact that 3ds Max is sometimes going to have a bit of a bad time figuring out what you exactly want to do. So let's try it again. Shift, drag, and this time it worked flawlessly. This is just 3ds Max, and the thing it does, sometimes it's going to have a little bit of a bad time figuring out what the user really needs. So if something doesn't work the first time, take a step back, rotate your camera a little bit, and move it again. So now we've got all the elements, but we're lacking the back of our box. So we're going to do the simplest possible solution. We're going to create it. Now let's go to Create Panel, Box, and we're just going to start by pressing S on our keyboard and just create the box from one corner to another to another. Now convert this object to editable poly, and we're going to make sure that by grabbing this one polygon, we're going to move it forward to the back up until it's nearly going to be flat, but not really. This object's size doesn't matter at the moment because it's not going to have any impact on our model whatsoever. So you might as well just make it bigger or smaller. Now we want to do the same thing, but start from the front. We're going to shift drag this object, and we're just going to make sure to create another box. But we remember that this box is supposed to be 40 centimeters on width. So we're going to add 40 centimeters and move it by pressing W on our keyboard. And by moving this object, we're going to be able to just simply move it towards the right edge. Okay, so it's in the right position. We can now select the x-axis only, shift and drag by one of the corners. So shift, drag by the corner, and copy. This wasn't necessarily a good idea because now we have to type in 2 and repeat this step, but it was easier than not doing it. Okay, so we've got most of the parts done. We need this shelf in the middle. So how do we do that? We could copy the object in at the bottom, or we can just create a new one. Again, creating or making it out of another one is going to be just well, up to you. I think that if we're trying to be precise, we're going to go for a box. We're going to start in the middle. We're going to continue. Remember that what I'm doing right now is creating this box with snap. That's why it's acting a little bit weird and it's jumping snappy. So let's go to convert to editable poly, move the bottom of our polygon. So we press 4 on our keyboard, double click so we select the bottom, and let's move it somewhere closer to the middle. Okay, that's fine. Now we can read that this object is slightly closer to 28. So I'm going to type in 28. So let's go. Now I want to select the top of my object and type in 30 because everything was supposed to have 2 centimeters width. Now all we need to do is move this towards the front. I don't want this to go outside. I want this to be slightly at the back, and now it looks perfect. If we want to go into super hyper detail, we can, but we don't want to at the moment. So I'm just going to show you a quick, or let's say one of the ways of adding a little bit more detail later on. You can see that this part is connected. I'm going to double click this element, sorry, this edge, and also hold Control and double click this one. We can now click on split, which is going to allow us to open those elements, which again pretty much just cut this object away from its original form. But it also opens the edge, which is okay in this case, but we don't want to leave any open edges. So we're going to Control Z to move it back. Now we can select the fourth very important sub-object level, which is border. Border is going to allow you to find any openings in your model, and then we're going to select everything and click on cap. This is going to create the polygon to cap or close the top. With the only thing that we have, that is left to do is to attach those polygons that we created for all the furniture pieces that we have. And now you can see that our object looks amazing. Just as a, let's say, cherry on the top, we're going to add a chamfer modifier. And this way, we're going to add the smallest of the smallest chamfers. Typically, you want to go around 3 millimeters because that's enough. And my personal suggestion for you is always go down on this modifier, go down in the menu and change this smooth output to from entire object to chamfers only. This way, your object is going to be a little bit more straightforward. You can see that this wasn't necessary detail, but it's looking really nice because now all those parts are connected. We didn't really need that, but I kind of like it. So we're going to keep it. Okay, so we've created our first furniture piece in our house, and this only means that we have pretty much the rest to do. So now we're going to do a bit of we're going to do something that I call a little bit of cheating, because we've got all of this furniture junk, and we also have the main furniture in our main scene that we were working with. And to be honest, creating this one furniture piece was the hardest. Rest is going to have exactly the same properties, and most of it is going to have exactly the same idea in it. But I'm going to guide you through the process of the most juiciest parts in a second. So it's not like we're going to just leave you hanging. So let's, I'm going to grab all of those objects and copy them from the main scene, because creating all of that furniture would be redundant. So I'm going to give you the measurements if you want to, but we might as well just create them on the flight. So, could you recommend this live and put it in a YouTube channel? It is going to be in our YouTube channel. Awesome model, thanks, sir. Is modeling with Boolean a bad idea? No, modeling with Boolean is not a bad idea depending on the model you're doing. Modeling with Booleans is actually a good idea, but again, it all depends on what kind of model you're doing and what is the intended purpose. Hello, so from Sudan, thanks a lot, learning a lot from your live. Thank you, Architectural Vision. So now, because again, cheating is something I can do because I've already got this scene, we're going to cut some corners and save a little bit of your time and just paste those elements in. I'm going to only give you the measurements for those elements, so it's not like I'm going to leave you without anything, but it's still going to be best to make sure to, well, model them on your own if you want to have them in your scene. But we just, for the time, well, time-related reasons, we're not going to be modeling every piece of geometry, okay? Hope that you can forgive me that, but, you know, it's all about just not spending 2 hours on creating boxes, because we just did the hardest one. So this furniture piece is going to be a little bit different size because it's 250 centimeters wide. It has 60 centimeters depth, and its top is on 75 centimeters. So just to highlight it better, this measurement is 250. This is 75. And this is going to be 45. Sorry, this is going to be 60. Okay, that 6 really didn't work out. So this is going to be the furniture for you. Also, we've got this furniture, which is this is exactly the same furniture piece as this one, so you might as well just copy it, so that there's nothing to well, pretty much there's nothing that's going to surprise you. This is again the same size, and literally it's the same furniture piece but more, and we went a little bit down. So the measurements are a little bit different. Here it's 120 centimeters tall, it's 110 centimeters wide, and this distance is the difference between 60 and, well, it's 60. So it's 60-60, and the split in the middle is just exactly what we did. I hope that we don't need to go through this part of the model because it's literally a box with inset. So in this case, you've already know how to do it. and you're just going to be able to place it anyway. So now it's the funny part, because we're getting to the point where modeling any further would be redundant. Why do I think so? Because all of the models that we're going to be adding into our scene are either going to be products or are going to have little value to us. So what do we do in such a situation? Well, this is when the Corona Chaos Corona comes in very handy, because they will have something called Open Corona. It's called Chaos Browser. So Chaos Browser is a huge library that is actually it's actually updating. Nice. I hate those updates, but they bring new models, so let's do them online. So real quick, what is now happening? I'm getting new models from the Chaos. That's really amazing, and you will have exactly the same library as I do right now. This library currently has 4,088 models and different assets. So this is quite amazing, because you will be also able to get the same amount. So what do we do here, or what kind of models are we going to be looking for? Well, first of all, you can see that this room is full of small props. So let's start with this flower, because that's one of the flowers that's in the Chaos library. That's also from Chaos library. This is from the internet, and those small elements that we have all around are also available in the Chaos library. So let's start looking for them on that library, and I'm going to be able to cheat a little bit in a second again, but let's find some furniture that's going to be good enough for us. Which render software do you use, and which is the best comparable software for 3ds Max? I would say that there's no such thing as the best. I just prefer Corona because it's the fastest. It allows me to be more creative than a technician, and because I'm already very technical, I love it because I don't need to be, and when I want to, I can be. So what it means is that you don't have to be an engineer in 3D rendering to start building some objects and to start rendering. Okay, so we're going to explore Chaos Cosmos a little bit. So let's click on 3D models, and first we're going to go to furniture. And it's actually very convenient because we've got exactly what we need, and there's a lot of chairs in here. So we could just type in by a little bit more important elements, or let's say tags, for example, office furniture, which is going to be exactly what we need. So lively task, a chair. Let's go. I think this one is going to be just good enough. So let's download it because it's a new model. So let's test it. Now we're going to click on download, and then we can just go ahead and click on this green icon. That means that we're going to be placing our object in the scene. By default, the objects are going to be added as Corona proxy. So Corona proxy means that this object is non-editable at the moment. So what does non-editable mean? We cannot just go to modify panel and simply change any vertices in it. Although we could click on duplicate to mesh, and that way we're going to retain our proxy, but we're also going to have the object copied into our scene. So I no longer need this proxy really, so I'm going to delete it. As it goes with all the models in 3ds Max and all 3D software, sometimes you're going to have to adjust. And in this case, I need to put my chair so that it can roll under the desk because it's a little bit too extruded. So we're going to select the polygons. So let's select our object. And this is going to be something that you have to also think about, or let's say consider, that you will always be able to change the properties and elements in your 3D models that you download. So we're just going to move this, and now it fits under the desk. Please notice a very important element of this setup, that because we created our floor exactly on 0, our newly created object is also on 0. I should have mentioned that the wheels for this element here were literally stolen from one of the chairs from the Chaos library, so I just edited those out. So if you want to have the same wheels at your furniture, just go ahead, select the elements, and then detach this as clone so you don't damage your original one. And we're just going to be able to have this nice wheel for us to use. And look at that, we can just change our rims to something even better looking. Okay, so moving it here. And voila, now we could change it, but I'm going to keep the old ones. So okay, well, our chair goes in, and this is going to be the easiest part. Now, we also need to find some suitable bed, which is again going to be exactly the same process, where you can go back to the library or some of the friendly websites that you're going to be able to use whenever you want. One thing that I forgot to mention, and what is going to be super important whenever you will be creating furniture like this, is sometimes you're going to create an object and its gizmo, or let's say the gravity center, is going to have a little bit of a problem with itself. So effect pivot only, we need to go to the hierarchy, we need to go to effect pivot only and change the pivot's position. Pivot's position can be understood as the point at which you rotate and move your element around. So we're going to be pretty much able to rotate our object along a little bit different axis. So sometimes when you will be modeling, your pivot is going to be messed up, and sometimes the rotation is going to be a little bit awkward. So how about I introduce you to a very special, to my heart, tool that absolutely nobody uses for some reason. So go to Edit, click on Transform Toolbox, and here we can see that we've got a very peculiar small window. Transform Toolbox allows you to quickly align the pivot exactly where you need it. We're going to click on Center, so it's exactly in the middle of the object, and we're going to then click on minimum value of Z. So it's now going to be at the bottom of our object. So regardless of what type of object we created, it is going to be now on 0. So if, for example, my furniture piece for some reason would be displaying that it's correctly placed on 0 and the pivot wasn't set up, once I set up the pivot, I can now type in 0 in Z value, and it's going to allow me to place it exactly on the ground. This is super important because you very often see that 3D renders and overall 3D work by some artists that will have a little bit of a problem with elements melting in or some furniture floating, and this is going to be problematic to some extent. But if your pivot is going to be set up correctly, it is very hard to mess this up. So it is going to be quite an important element of your journey. So let's go ahead and continue furnishing our office. And there's a few more options to pick and choose from, but I think we took something that looks quite nice. There are other good models here. So we now need a computer. So computer. Let's go ahead and try to take this Apple device. I think this looks fine. So we've got this little fella. Let's go to computer and let's click on it, import it, and import it again. So both of those objects are now in our scene. I kind of have a problem because I want to put them on the desk, but I don't want to aim for where the desk is, and I don't want to snap because now the snap is going to be a bit obnoxious because it's going to try to snap to every the geometry piece in this chair. So I would have to hide the chair and use this with with this one element. So there's a solution. We can go ahead and go back to the menu that we were talking about the very beginning. So that was very important, and yes, no need for foreshadowing, eh? So we're going to be using Select and Place tool. So this tool is a total game changer because now we can click on it and we can literally just select our object and move it around our scene without snap on and no snap angle toggle. And we're just going to go ahead and move it around our scene. We can place this on the wall and it's going to instantly adjust to the surface. Heck, I can even place it exactly on the sitting area, but I'm just going to put it on the desk, rotate it by 90 degrees because that's what I need. Maybe not even 90, so it's going to look more natural. And this computer is already on the on the ground, so we're going to move it. By the way, guys, the first computer I had in one of the offices I worked at was exactly this Mac, and it was exactly this one. The guy that hired me, it was 10,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. So the guy that hired me was also in charge of an Apple shop, right? So he wanted to buy a computer for the office because if they sell a Mac Pro, they're going to pretty much get some kind of bonuses, and the shop is going to have a little bit higher tier. So the guy just bought it for his own office, in which he hired me to do some kind of renderings. And the funny part is that when everybody heard that a new guy is coming to the office and he's getting a super expensive Mac computer, everybody was so scared of me, like, who is that guy? And I had a lot of stories from that place. But the funniest part is that from the very beginning, the first day, everybody was scared of me for no absolute reason. I was a victim there. So, hello from Uzbekistan. I'm searching for a live channel, and I found this very interesting and knowledgeable. Appreciate you. Thank you. That's I am so surprised that the YouTube internet is so kind. I never imagined that this is going to look the way it does, because everybody is so nice. I didn't anticipate for that. I was prepared for some critique, for some flaming, but really, the way you guys are, it's so heartwarming. I love it. It's very encouraging, very encouraging. Okay, so going back to Chaos Cosmos, we're going to keep on furnishing our elements. We're going to keep on putting elements into our flat, right? I have a question. How I can lower the vertex of my model? So architectural vision. I'm going to show it to you in a second on two objects in just a minute. Okay, so this is the flower that I pointed towards earlier. We're going to take this one, and let's see what else we have in here that's going to be good for decorative purposes. So let's go to accessories, decoration, shoes. Let's go. Shoes are nice. I like this star. I like that frame. They both look nice. And we're going to take this deer. Okay. What else? What else? Any suggestions, guys? Oh, this looks nice. This is a very nice prop. It looks like a Vermotion prop. By the way, there's a lot of companies out there that I'm super grateful for what they created. It was a very helpful thing that they did. We've got a few objects in here. Remember that all of those objects that we download from Chaos Cosmos will come into your scene as proxy. So this is also something that you have to remember, that in order to keep your scene as small and as tidy, you want to proxify all the objects in the future. But proxifying objects is something that I go through with our students during the training, so I'm not going to go to details about that at the moment. We're just going to furnish this and place sims in 3ds Max. So this kind of fits. Okay, let's take the bouquet. Let's move it here because this is a romantic person. And now we have we don't have a problem. Now let's put it here. Perfect. My deer is going there. Perfecto. Now the shoes. The shoes are going to go exactly here, next to the bed. The frame, I kind of want it on a wall, but I will place it here. It's okay, it looks good now. More or less, what's very important is that all of those objects that I downloaded already have some kind of maps on it or some kind of texture. So you're not going to be forced into adding them in on your own. Because I want to cheat a little bit, I will go back to the original room and steal a little bit of my own images, because I want to use them on our final render. So this is just some kind of posters from the previous webinars that I did. I'm going to steal a little bit more, maybe even the bed, because why not? We can take one from the Chaos library because this is going to be something that we're allowed to do. Hi, how did you place the objects on the surfaces? We literally just went through it. It's an option called Select and Place. It's exactly placed here. Before you use it, make sure to set up your object's pivot. This is the ugliest arrow I ever drew. Let's go ahead and just make sure to add it a little bit better. So now it's this option here, it's Select and Place. You want to get familiar with it because it's a game changer, especially because it's super easy to use and well, crash resistant. Let's go ahead and add those objects, paste from. So this is one of the plugins that I've introduced to you guys on one of our webinars. So if you want to know more about it, make sure to watch the webinar called 5 Best Plugins for 3ds Max. This is exactly what I'm using, and one of them, it was really Copy 2. It's the GOAT. I love it. It's the best of all. And now our small room looks really weird at the moment without any colors whatsoever. So we're going to have to speed up the process and copy 1 or 2 more objects. Okay, this looks fine. This goes with me. This goes with me. Okay, and let's take the lamp because I don't think we're going to be modeling this lamp anytime soon. I'm not going to take anything else. Okay, it looks fine so far, so good. Now I know what are your computer specs. So it's not really going to be any kind of benchmark or good point to compare, but I've got Threadripper 2970WX, which is a bit fast, but there are better processors out there, and I'm planning to update my software quite soon. Core Temp, let's open this software up. 1 second. So we're going to be able to see my specs exactly. AMD Ryzen Threadripper 2970WX 24 core processor, and I'm running currently 64 gigabytes of RAM, and the temperatures are getting higher because we're streaming. So let's go ahead and continue with our model. Right now I'm cheating a little bit, but all of the models that I have here are pretty much available in the Chaos Cosmos library, so you can also continue on your own. There's nothing like the create a circle, then the rest of the all. You know that meme, right? So this is not this type of webinar. It's just that I'm cutting a few corners because you're also going to be doing exactly that. Which is the best processor, Ryzen or Intel? There's no such thing that as best processor. There's just your price point, and it's always going to be, if you have 100 pounds and you want to buy something good, which restaurant is the best one? Well, if you have 100 pounds, you want to go to the one that's going to create some kind of food for you in that, let's say, price range. But if you want to buy something for 1,000 pounds, then you would think in a little bit different terms. So it's all going to come down to the budget. So there's no such thing as the best processor. There's only the best wallet. So if your wallet allows you to get the best specs, you're going to get it. I personally think that there's no reason for anybody to be a fanboy or prefer one over another. Remember that both of them just create hardware that you are buying. So you just need this to be reliable. It's not that powerful. It's good enough. It's good enough, and I would say 3960 is a little bit better to work with because it's smoother, and my processor is I would say a little bit like ramping up when I start working. You can kind of see it when I select something. It kind of lags for a couple of milliseconds. It's annoying to me, and it's probably going to be annoying to you as well to some extent. So let's go ahead and check if we have that material library. Okay, I do have it, so save it. And we're going to do a bit of magic with our materials now. Ryzen is good for Corona. Intel is good for V-Ray. No, there's no such distinction. It's all about the specs. You want to check how fast it renders, and if it's in your budget, that's all. I wouldn't say that one is better than the other. Whoa, yeah, that Ala is very good. So Ala actually is one of my students, and his computer is better than mine. Yeah, he's one of those guys. He's really good. He actually created some amazing renders. By the way, let's just talk about that, because Ala, is it okay to show your renders? I know it is. So let's give me a second, I'll just look for them. Since Ala is in our audience, we're going to use this to show you some of his work. Just disclaimer, Ala is already working with 3ds Max, and he proclaimed that he started with a level 4 out of 5, so let's say that he's not necessarily a beginner, but I'm going to also show you a few images created by beginners, so you can have a fair comparison, because really I would say that although Ala did amazing work, some of the people that started from absolute zero, they also created amazing renders. So it's not going to be a bad idea to show that work to you guys. So we've got somebody who started with zero. Okay, just downloading the beautiful images. Okay. Oh, Bianca is working on something really nice. And our group is currently doing exteriors. So at the moment, I don't want to, let's say, show my students' credentials, because that would be unfair. And I don't want to give out any names, because that's double unfair. But let's see, view, large icons, and we're going to see some of the images. First of all, let's talk about Ala's work. So Ala has created this beautiful, beautiful image during our training. So this is something he chose to do. This is something he was working on relentlessly for a couple of weeks, but considering his skill, it was probably a couple of minutes. No, honestly, this is really amazing work, and I'm super proud of you, Ala. Also, we have this image, which is super cool, so congratulations. And we've got one that absolutely blew my mind, and during our lesson we went over all of those effects, how to create that from rendering and not Photoshop level, and yeah, Ala nailed it. So you can see that our students are really doing the right thing. We also have something created by Ben. So Ben, congratulations. Also, we've got beautiful work by Jessica. We've got more Jessica. Now a bit of Ala. Oh, by the way, we've got Ellie. Beautiful work, really amazing, quite impressive, I would say. Sorry for that. Okay, this is Danielle, and this is one of the images, a previous version. This is not the final version. We already have the fixed version here. So that's something. Celine, also Bianca, amazing work, very impressive. And this is what Benjamin is currently working on. I'm just waiting for it to materialize. And now we've got Benjamin's work. Again, it's a super high quality image, love it. And now we've got another image by Benjamin, and this is again something from our lesson. We were talking about how to make screen textures and how to make them work. So there's a lot of things that we have to go through, so definitely a lot of things to well, catch up on. During our training, we go through every piece of geometry in our 3D models. We try to help our students perfect their craft. Also, what's really amazing is that not only we give you webinars that are similar to this one, but faster and smarter. Also, we've got videos that are going to help you prepare for the upcoming lessons. And on top of that, we review your work, and we also provide online support 7 days a week. We mostly do it during the work week, but this is something that is really amazing. And if any of our student has any kind of issue or problems with doing any part of the homework, done. Our support is going to help you go over it. Can you make a tutorial on making materials for beginner? Archlife, I believe we can. So nice work, Alan. Okay, and great mentor, great students. I would say the students are more important here. Now, still not having fun with training with. Still don't have fun. Still not training. Okay, I really appreciate your method of teaching. You are explaining clearly. I would like to learn 3ds Max from you. Okay. It's important to make clear and better machine doesn't make you a better artist. It's okay to have hardware, but not vital. Oscar, thank you for pointing that out. It's really good that you've actually said that. It is actually good. Thank you. It is really exactly what Oscar said. To become a great artist, you don't need to have a beefy computer. Most of our students have laptops that they used during their college, or their mom's laptops that they used for Facebook. If the scene is going to be more complicated or too beefy to handle by your computer, there's always an option to rent a render farm or any other hardware online. So there's absolutely nothing stopping you from creating beautiful images just with the skill set that you have. So you don't have to have supercomputer to do it. You have to have enough skills, and this is something you acquire with us. So again, Vizacademy Co. UK. Also visit our Instagram. There's a lot of cool stuff that we're putting out there, because it's accepting a little bit shorter messages. We cannot really do webinars like this one. How long does it take to make an image to render 0-2D noise? Well, how much is a car? That's the question. I mean, what settings to use to render a 4K image? Okay, so to actually render a 4K image, I'm going to let you in on a small secret. You want to go to Performance, Secondary Solver, and click on 4K cache. This is going to slightly speed up the process, not too much, but you're going to save a few percent on that. 4K, it's there. Also, lowering the max depth of rays if your scene doesn't have so many reflections is going to be a good idea to just consider that. But generally, Corona doesn't need any kind of extra settings, changes in the scene, because it's really going to be ready to go off the bat. So this is something I really love about Corona, and well, overall working with 3D, that most of the time it's all about what you know, not what you need, what you have. So now we need to start working with our materials. Materials are going to be quite important element whenever we will be creating our scenes. But before I really get into creating any materials, I need to make sure that we have something that's going to be lighting those materials. So let's go ahead and first of all set up our camera position. I already pretty much have it, so I'm going to stick to what I've got. We're going to click on camera from the view, so we're going to be able to go back to it whenever we want, zoom in slightly, place it exactly where we need it. Perfect. Now, this is the shot that we're working with. By creating our Corona, this is Corona camera set to orthographic. So in projection in VR, we can set perspective, or we can set the orthographic. In this case, because I want this to be orthographic view, I need it. Also, to make sure that you remember, you can also adjust how much or what you're going to see during this process by simply adjusting it. Prior to rendering anything, we should come up with our, let's say, output size, because this is going to be very important to how you're going to be building your scene or the environment around. So I'm going to change this output size to custom, go for image aspect ratio 1, and you can see that if I would be rendering this, I would be rendering a lot of empty space. So we're going to adjust our ortho view size and just make sure that it fits more or less like this. Now, this is going to be the first step. The command tab is set. Now we need to go to our scene settings, and here we're going to go ahead and create our, add a single map. That single map is going to be Corona Sky. So let's go ahead and quickly go to Corona, click on Corona Sky, and this is going to be enough for us to have a very nice lighting. Although I'm still going to create Corona Sun, which is going to be in this light bulb in creation panel. Then we're going to go to our Corona and grab Corona Sun. Remember that some of you just downloaded Corona, so at this point you might be asked to activate your license. So you will need to go to System, and you're going to have to go to this tab and activate your trial. So I'm not going to guide you through this because this is going to be individual when you start your trial. Our students don't really have that problem at the moment, but this is something to consider. Then the third thing we're going to do is go to scene, and still being here, we're going to go to material override and click on this non-element and then click on Corona Physical. Here we're going to select Corona Physical, and that is going to be the almost end of it, because now I can click on Start Interactive and start rendering. So we're going to see that I'm missing a lot of textures. So this being said, I'm probably going to have to make sure to find all of those textures in a second, but in a second, let's lower the exposure. And we just created exactly what we wanted. So as for the materials and adding all of them in, I'm not going to show every piece of material creation because that would take us too long. So today I'm going to show you how to do the basic furniture that we've created and how to add materials to your walls. Because the rest of the objects, for example, the bed and the elements that we downloaded, are already going to have their own textures applied thanks to the fact that we already had them downloaded with some kind of textures. So let's go ahead and create those materials together. So first thing I'm going to introduce you to is something called material IDs. Material IDs are very important in 3ds Max because they will determine where what material will go. This is just one of those ways, but this one is the basic. So first we're going to select all the polygons that we know that we want to be gray. Let's deselect by angle, go to a different view, and make sure that we do not select the top. The bottom of all of our polygons is going to be set as ID 1. So we're going to go to here, set ID 1. Okay, now we're going to press Ctrl and I to reverse the selection, and the rest is going to be set as 2. It actually is already 2. So perfect. Now by doing this, I'm going to be able to apply a special material to it. That special material is called multi-sub-object material. We can see that it has 10 slots by default. You can set the number to any number, but I'm going to set it to 2. So okay, we're going to set only 2 colors. One grayish color for the walls. So we're going to go to materials, Corona. By the way, this is beginners. So let's click on this area, left click, go to materials, and now we're going to go to Corona and we're going to go for Corona Physical material. We're not going to go in depth about materials yet because this is not the type of webinar, but we're going to go ahead and add roughness to something around 0.5 because this is going to ensure that our object is going to have a slight amount of reflection. Also, we're going to, or slightly less blurred out reflection. We're going to go ahead and lower the value, so it's going to be nice and gray. So that's it. we can now shift and copy this material and just simply plug it into the slot number 2. In this case, the second material is going to be changed a little bit to be brighter. Please make sure to set it to something around 180 because that's going to be the maximum amount we are going to need in this particular scene. Apply this material to your object by still having it selected. Make sure to select the body of your multi-sub-object level. Any material that's selected is going to be highlighted with this white bracket around it. So make sure that it's actually what you're using. Go to Assign Material to Selection, click on it, and then we're going to go back to Render Setup. As we didn't really set up all the materials, I'm going to, for now, add this material to Exclusion. Let's start Interactive and see how it really works. As you can see, I'm still missing those textures, but at the same time, our, sorry, did I not create this camera? 1 second. Yes, please. So thanks to this, all of my walls are grayish. I think I may have went a little bit too far with the amount of darkness in it. So we're just going to try to make it a little bit happier by changing this back to a little bit, let's say, brighter color. So we're going to go for color. Apply a bit more. Okay, this is now going to be fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and now add the materials to our furniture. We're going to probably do exactly the same thing, but we're also going to use one of the textures in a second. While your interactive render is going to be active, sometimes your material editor is going to act a little bit weird. If it does happen to you, make sure to just restart your material editor or delete this because it's going to display in your material editor incorrectly. So make sure to delete those, and we've got a new pair. So let's set up the material for our furniture piece. As you remember, we're going to be using the materials that we already had on the furniture to begin with. So what we're going to be able to do is simply grab this part and do exactly what we did a second ago. I don't even remember what kind of coloring that I used, so we're going to have to wait a second and up until I'm actually going to see the resources for my webinar. Let's see. So this is supposed to be dark, white, white. Okay, so we're going to do that in a second. Okay, first thing first, isolate the selection. Let's go ahead and follow the same rules as we did a second ago. So this is going to be ID number 1. This is going to be ID number 1. Let's select those two elements, set ID 1, Control I, and this is going to be ID number 2, which is going to be the wooden element. One element is still missing, but we're going to get to it in a second because now we're going to apply this furniture or this material. This one is brighter, so I'm going to put it here. This one is darker, so I'm going to change it into wooden material. Okay, so to make your material into wood, we need a texture. Texture is an image that's going to be projected onto your object. So to do it, we need to click on color, click here. We can select Corona bitmap, and this Corona bitmap is going to be a container for an image. So in your case, you're going to need to download some kind of object that is going to be, let's say, some kind of picture that's going to be displaying some kind of wood. So in retrospect, if you're a total beginner and you don't know how the textures how the textures look like, you will probably need to Google wood texture. That's it, and you're going to probably find it exactly where you need it. Now, how to lower the poly count? Oh, yes, now we're going to talk about poly count in a second. So this is now going to be a wooden element, and we apply it to our furniture piece. Exclude this from an override, and let's see how this object behaves in our interactive render. With that out of the way, it actually looks really nice, but I kind of don't like the fact that at the moment the object, although it's surprisingly correctly mapped, it's not really as bright as I wanted it. So we're going to go to Material Editor, and we're going to add one extra node in here, which is going to be in between the Corona Basic and the Corona Bitmap. change material map type to apply it, Corona color correct, and we're going to keep the old as a sub-object map, which is going to just force it to be in a child-parent situation. Now we lower the saturation slightly, 25% should be enough, and let's go for something around 35 or 40% more in gamma. This is going to make our element brighter, just like on our reference. And now if I unhide all the rest, we're going to see that the furniture is starting to look really good. Mapping and all the elements related to that should be explained in one of the videos that we did at some previous point. Now, there's also something that we haven't yet gone through, because I'm still missing a ton of textures. As you can see, quite a lot of them are missing. So how do we really find any textures that we're missing? Well, first and the easiest way is to go to your hard drive, go to the file where you have it, and try to look for the name of that file. So I'm looking for Okay, so let's look for that. Let's go. And so we're going to see that there's a lot of those files in one of the folders. So I'm going to jump to that spot and we're going to make sure to open the file location. Typically, when you will be working with some kind of files that you download from the internet, or you're going to get some kind of libraries, there's going to be a ton of textures in there. And sometimes it's not really going to be a good idea to even have so many folders in. So what I like to do with files like that is simply create a new folder that I call textures. I go to the first lowest point where I've got some kind of problem, and then I go to kind, then we type in picture. So this way, we're going to look for any textures that are here in those folders, all of them, and we are not going to be forced to go to 10,000 folders at this moment. So I'm going to just go ahead and go 2 steps back, copy and paste all of those. Yes, it's good to use plugins, but remember that we're at the very bare minimum. So if we're going to be relinking bitmaps, I can also use Floor Generator, I can use RailCloud, I can even do simulations here with a lot of plugins, but we're talking about beginners. So suggesting extra software is only going to build up on the how complicated it is. It's worth mentioning that there's a plugin for that. In case a PBR material, is there a way to change the tiliness without having to go into each Corona bitmap and having to change them? Well, that's about the mapping. But yes, you can also change the tiling on an individual object by changing it by using UVW Xform, which is a modifier that will allow you to do exactly that. Can you use any dedicated graphics card? You don't need dedicated graphics card for Corona, as Corona is a rendering engine that relies on the processor. So now Shift-T to open asset tracking. We're going to refresh everything, and we're going to see that we've got a ton of proxies, some missing files, and we're going to see what they are. So blend velvet. Let's go to our old file. Let's see, there's 17 folders, 0 files. Let's delete those, continue, because I don't need this. Okay, something is using it, I don't need it. Anyway, I've got those textures and I can see that there's blend velvet. So we're just going to copy this directory, and then we're going to go to here and right click, set path, and we're going to make sure to specify where those files are. In this case, I'm going to specify all of those files because I don't want to add an external library. What is the difference between Corona legacy material and Corona physical material? Corona legacy material is the better known old version of Corona MTL. So Corona MTL was the default version of Corona material prior to Corona physical. Corona physical, although it looks almost the same, it has a few safeguards that are going to be very cool to work with. For example, if you go for Corona Physical and change object to metal, metal no longer can be refractive. So you cannot create refractive metal. So this is going to be a safeguard, which is not only going to save you from excessive rendering time, but also from doing something physically incorrect. While Corona Legacy material has all of the options that Corona Physical does, but the difference between it is that it uses glossiness instead of roughness. Roughness and glossiness are exactly the same, but reverse. What's one here is 0 in the other, and the opposite. They have a very subtle differences in those curves, but really it's not important. Long story short, both have the same options, and there's little to no advantage to actually using physical, but physical is more in tune with the industry standards. So if you're going to be downloading something off the internet, it is going to be easier for you to adapt that thing into your scene, and it's just a more unified language of creating materials. Can I say it better to use physical Corona material? Yes, it's better to use Corona Physical material at all cases, but there's nothing wrong with using Corona Legacy, as it's basically almost the same. It has microscopic differences that not everybody is going to be able to appreciate. So now, where were we? We were adding our textures. So we're still missing a few. So let's make sure to see how many of them. So we've got those poofs. Okay, we're going to do exactly the same thing, set path. We're going to apply this. Are you using Blender? No, I'm using 3ds Max. And 3ds Max, you mean in general? I do try to use it from time to time. I do revisit it each time when there's a new version to see if it's for me now, but no luck yet. It's just that I kind of like it because I generally like the idea of Blender, which is free software with a lot of very greedy people around it, while 3ds Max is just not the same thing, because to get it you have to get the money, and well, that kinda entails that you're probably going to be working with mostly professionals, because they had to pony up a few bucks for that software, and for that reason you're going to be able to kind of expect a little bit higher quality. This is also something that you're going to see in a lot of tutorials. I'm not saying all, I'm not insulting anybody, but from my experience when I was trying to learn Blender, all of the tutorials out there were very goofy, and I kind of didn't like this, and there was no professional workflow for any kind of applications that I'm really interested in. So it's cool, it's amazing, you can create amazing stuff there, and I'm not saying it's bad in any way, I'm just saying it's not for me. Okay, so let's type it in. Okay, just want to save time on material creation. Have you tried Cahoom? No, I haven't tried Cahoom yet. Can you tell me more about it? Because I might try. Maybe it's going to be something that I will be able to use in our workflow from now on. Okay, now with all the materials done, we're going to, or let's say fixed, we can kind of unlock our material override, because now most of those files are going to work really nice. So we're just going to start interactive for the last time probably, because now all the colors are going to be there, but the floor still needs a little bit of a texture. So let's go ahead and add one of those textures in. So Chaos Cosmos. Yeah, we're going to go to materials. Let's go for wood or wood flooring, and we can just take whatever we want. I'll just take wooden tiles, shiny. It's cool because having such a vast library to quickly work with everything in 3ds Max is amazing. Also, you want to probably use the 3 planar version, not real world scale version, because 3 planar is the best. And now we're going to start interactive for Kahum is a cloud-based rendering software. No, I'm not really using it yet because I am sufficient, but I will test it out. When it comes to cloud rendering, I'm not really a big fan of it because a lot of times it is cheap on some of the websites. For example, I like Rebus Render Farm. They are very nice, and the people that work there are very cool people because, for example, their support is very nice. I talked to a few other rendering farms that I don't want to name because this is not how I operate. I don't want to insult anybody because maybe I just had one bad experience. But the thing is that I just didn't like it. That guy wasn't nice. Although a Rebus Render Farm, very cool. Now let's go ahead and change the intensity of the sun 0.5. Let's make this sun a little bit different color because I want this to be nice and warm. Let's do it that way, and let's make sure that the size is going to be approximately 15 because I want those shadows to be softer. Now let's type in contrast and maybe add an LUT, so we're going to have an Instagram filter on top of everything, so it's just going to be that. LUTs are not Instagram filters, but this is how I treat them for the most part. Bloom and glare, and maybe because I kind of want to, I'm going to make sure to add another level of background. So let's create some kind of plane that's going to be good enough for us. Okay. Okay, and now -20 because that's how big our plane is. And look at that, we made it. We made it. So this is how you can create this type of rooms without too much hassle. It's a very simple process to follow. I kind of made it different than the original because I didn't have the patience to look for the exact same items, and I didn't want to copy all of them. So we introduced you to some of the tools. The most important things to remember is select and place in your friend. Also, using edit tools such as transform toolbox is going to be a godsend. And if you want to edit, change, or manipulate any kind of downloaded objects, go ahead and do so. You don't need to respect it. Just go ahead and adjust it to your own needs. As long as it's going to make sense and look good, it's exactly what you need. So this is pretty much it. We just created our house. It looks almost, oh my God. So I wanted to go back to the original scene to compare it, but thank you 3ds Max. This is the end I was looking forward to. I mean, having a bit of a critical error is always the best. So Mike, every time we open a file, texture missing pop-ups, can you set 3ds Max to always search for texture on a specific drive? Asim, there's a video on our YouTube channel on that exact topic, but I'll just show it to you. So the first thing first, if a file is missing, or depending on where you put that texture, you can probably set one folder with all of the textures or folders with specific textures to work with. So what you want to go for is Shift T, then go to Paths, configure project paths, and here we're going to go to external files, and in external files you add exactly the directories that you're interested in. So in my case, you can see that I've got Vizacademy, absolutely everything. Then I've got some personal libraries, some forest pack files, and whatever. You just click on add and look for the specific location where the textures are. You find that folder, you use this patch, and preferably you also add subpaths if there's not too many folders in it. Once it's there, there's going to be a very simple way of identifying whether the file was found or it was exactly at the direction that 3ds Max was looking for it. So in this case, you can see that the file status is okay. So it was found exactly where 3ds Max was searching for it. If it's going to be set to be found, it means that a file that had the same name was in one of the external user paths that we set up. So this is going to be the termination, or file missing is the third option. You can also set network drives there, but they will slow down the performance of your 3ds Max, although it's nice to use some kind of drive like that. Going to AI future, does it affect us? Well, it does affect us, but it's a tool. It's a tool like all the others that you're going to be using. I personally started using AI for prototyping to change between the options, and then I recreate that option in 3ds Max because I kind of like it, or it opened up a new possibility for me, but it never, at least now, looks good. It's always a little bit goofy, it's a little bit weird, it's a little bit not up to my standard. So yes, it's good, it's getting better, and it is going to be a tool like every other. When Corona was coming out, it was said that, oh my God, our industry is doomed. Now everybody can render in a couple of seconds. We're doomed. Everybody's going to lose their job. Nothing happened. We only went through the same process with a little bit of a bigger, we were able to produce more work. That also resulted in more clients being interested in us, but at the same time, we also had to adjust our prices. Some went up, some went down, but in most of the cases, nobody died out of it. So AI is going to be the same. It's just going to be a tool. Hi, is there a tutorial about how to make selections, elevations, or 3ds Max diagrams in your channel? I think we have a few of those on our channel, so you have to look for it. Shift T looks great. Typical 3ds Max. Yes, the crashing is its best surprise. Unless at least it didn't crash on me during the this. It crashed because I stolen all of the textures that it was using, and it got very sad about this. So this is just the sad, grim reality of 3ds Max. Sometimes it's just going to crash from time to time. So let's save this file, because why not? Okay, will there be a short tutorial on how to work with combination ArchiCAD 3ds Max with Corona, how to export, scale, etc.? Well, Mr. Fart and Run, I believe we can. Very interesting name, my dear listener or viewer. Oh yeah, how to lower poly count. I forgot to go for it. So let's go ahead and talk about the poly count. So when it comes to poly count and reducing it, you want to probably consider three things. When it comes to plants, you want to leave them alone, because there's little to no advantage to optimizing plants, because they will almost always look bad if you do. So those are best to be proxified out of your scene. When it comes to objects that you want to proxify, that you want to reduce the amount of polygons on, those are typically going to be flat surfaces like this, where you pretty much have no detail, and it's a very dense model for no reason. Well, we've got three options on how to do it. Number one is pro-optimization. No, number one is proxifying. If your computer can handle the model overall, proxifying is going to be best, because it's the least the easiest thing you can do. Number two is going to be pro-optimizer, which is going to make sure that you can just go for the change the amount of polygons literally by reducing the quality of your object. So first, before you click on Pro Optimizer, you want to click on Keep Textures, because if you don't, we're going to mess up the texture projection that we have right now. I'm going to click on it and mess it up on purpose, so we can have a little bit of a bad time, because now our textures are absolutely ruined. But if I'm going to keep textures and calculate it again, even though I'm going to optimize the model, the texture is going to stay intact, which is probably what you would prefer if the model is already pre-mapped. So we're going to lower this vertex count. You can see that some magical numbers are going down and nothing is really happening. Well, it is happening. So let's jump to our clay render and see what this does to our model. It's literally taking or giving away, giving a sum of the vertices. We can lower this MacBook whatever up to 4 or 5% of its original, and there's little to no difference to what we had prior. But by the way, sorry for those sounds. It's render. Render is sleeping. Hey, render. Hey, wake up. Come on. Okay, he's asleep again. I mean, he's awake now. So anyway, the Pro Optimizer is the best way of doing this because you can see that I optimized this object up to 5%, and the difference between the original and what we have right now is almost impossible to notice. So once you're done, you want to convert your object to editable poly to collapse that modifier. If you don't do it, all you did here was add a new modifier, and each time you're going to be opening the scene, you're going to have to recalculate it, so it made no effect. But the thing is that the mesh is now going to be messed up. You're not going to be able to reuse it with Turbo Smooth and whatnot. But the difference is that from 200,000 polygons that this object had, we now have 10,000. So that's a huge improvement. Now let's see this bad, because that's another object that's going to be a huge problem in most of the cases. Because you can see that by poly count, this is 400,000 polygons. So again, we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to go for Pro Optimization, and we're going to now have a comparison of object that we do not optimize and one that we do. So we're going to just check them out. First, we've got the Pro Optimizer, keep textures, that's a must, calculate. And at the moment, we see no difference between those two because both of them are going to be the 100%. Now, what we want to do is type in 50%. Do you see any difference? Nope. Do you see any difference at 25%? There was a small something, a glitch. You can see that the edges are not as refined. So this only can mean that the quality of the object was reduced, and it was. But are we going to view this object from medium or short distance? If it's short distanced object, we don't use Pro Optimization, we use proxy. If it's mid or far distance, we're going to be using Pro Optimizer. And this is going to pretty much, for a shot like mine with what I'm doing right now, I can go as low as 5% and nobody's going to be able to notice. Okay, 10% because of the finer details. But we can delete that one and you cannot see any difference between those two, and the file overall works exactly the same. It renders the same, no detail is lost, textures are in place, and it looks good. That's pretty much the whole purpose of Pro Optimization. And what we gained out of it is we lost many polygons. I mean, not literally. We reduced the count of polygons. Now this object is pretty much clear. We can see it a little bit better. Do you seen my advice for K-Trucker in previous stream? Nope. No, I did. I did see it, Stefan. Named render. Yes, my dog is named render. Can you also find customize user path? I wish 3ds Max can have a function that can help you just auto texture or auto decorate the place when input style you want. You kind of, we're getting there. Give 3ds Max 3 years and the AI solutions will be there and they will work exactly like that. Oh yeah, how to lower poly count? Okay, that pretty much is it. How your class is average how many students per group? I'm a slow learner. So It all varies. We try not to overcrowd our groups. We typically work at a maximum of 20 people at the same time. But although some of you may think it's a lot, it's really not enough, in my opinion, because I would like to have even bigger groups for that. Because once we're during the webinars, students ask questions and the group moves together as a small hive. So if student A has a problem with modeling, I'm going to go over it and explain it to everybody. If you're creating something awesome and we want to highlight it, everybody else is going to see it. And 20 awesome people is better than just 2, because typically you will be a little bit busy with your life and you're not going to be spending as much time with 3ds Max as well a total of 20-ish people will. So if we're going to have our chat, which we do, you're going to be able to go over the history and check what kind of progress we're making, because our groups are working in a very peculiar manner. The way we operate is very simple. We have 3 meetings per week. So we have Monday, Wednesday, and Friday webinars, which are around the evening. So all the webinars typically take around 1 hour. I try to make them shorter to not bore the students, but I actually fail at it, and we typically do 1.5 or 2 hour long sessions because of the amount of questions, which I appreciate. Then we're going to not only we operate on those around those webinars, because at each webinar you're going to be given a set of tasks to perform prior to the next webinar. So each webinar is not only introducing new work for you, but also it reviews your progress and current homework and each lesson. So that way we can go over very common problems, a lot of issues that you may run into, and some trivia and tips and tricks on how to use 3ds Max in a proper manner. Then on top of everything, because homework can be hard, we also give you an ability to contact with our support. Our support is, let's say, made out of professionals with a few years of experience. With one person that I work with, worked on visuals personally, and the rest is just other seasoned professionals that I really love their work. So I would say that the best thing is that you have access to professionals, to talk to them, to ask them for advice, or to just review your work and to help you. On top of everything, we also provide our students with extra bonuses. One of those bonuses is Autodesk licensing for students, and also access to the Chaos Students program, which is really amazing. And we also provide you with tons of extras that I cannot really disclose all, but if you would like to join Vizacademy, go to our website, which is Vizacademy Co. UK, and check out the available dates. Right now we're still recruiting for the September. We've got a few last seats and we're probably going to run out of them quite soon, but it's good to test if you can sign up. If not, there's always another term, but it's really good to start fresh, because now if you're a student and you want to go to your college, having a little bit of an extra skill prior to that is going to be very powerful and quite useful, because you're going to be able to impress your teachers and maybe take part in some contests that always look good on in your portfolio and CV. Okay, so we are always see tutorials with a lot of openings for sunlight or skylight, but no one is doing lighting. What do you think of this topic for Vizacademy next webinar? Well, why not? I think we can do something like that. Right now, I was talking to one of my students and I thought that it would be a good idea to test out if we could do a few shots that would be a little bit different to, well, let's say clubs. Yeah, I was thinking about doing shots like those, you know, clubs and places that are a little bit more light dependent. And also we could consider going through a very simple animation without any specifics. I'm just going to try to show you this video, and the funny part about this whole video is that nothing in here is moving, nothing is was created using any specific animation. It's all me faking the movement using some of the techniques that are available in 3ds Max. So it's a very simplistic let's say demo for the investors prior to actually investing into a project that was really large. And it's a club in Greece, so this is something, or a showroom, and that also can be very useful. And I was thinking about those projects that we could go through them next time. We're still planning to do the portfolio reviews. We're still planning to do Barbie part 2. We have a lot planned ahead, and that is why I would like to ask you to do something for me. If you're still here, if you could please make sure to subscribe to our channel. I know that some of you aren't yet subscribed, but it really helps us beat the algorithm, and it helps us reach more of you. By leaving a like and commenting under this webinar, you're going to boost our reach. You don't even know how valuable that is for us, and it really helps. So if you could please make sure to leave a comment once we're done, and subscribe, ring the bell for notifications whenever we release new videos, and we're working on them constantly, so you're going to be able to enjoy content like this. I prefer to do it live because I kind of like the conversation we're having, and just creating videos and talking to the screen is not as exciting as actually having an audience. So this is it for today. Thank you very much for your beautiful presence and for all the attention you gave to our webinar. Once again, thank you, and I see you next time. Next week, we're going to do something very similar, but for exteriors. Again, it's going to be beginner level, so I'm hoping that all of you will be there. So once again, thank you, and see you next time. Bye-bye.